my friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel, Medicate with Movement. Today we're going to talk about to tuck your tail or not tuck your tail. And I want to point out that we have curves in our back for a reason. It helps us distribute weight to maintain balance, and we want to maintain those curves. The lumbar, which is the lumbar curve, which is your lower back, helps to distribute the weight of the spine, and our other structures helps us to connect, to stay balanced within the gravitational pool that we're in, right? Because we're not fish, right? We don't live in water, we live on Earth. So we're constantly being pulled by gravity, and depending on how we position the body, supine on our back, prone on our belly, a quadruped position, which is kneeling on all fours, to standing, to seated, each one of those angles has a different gravitational pull. Some people have a more pronounced lumbar curve. I happen to be one of those people. And then I'm a curvy person on top of that, meaning I have flesh and a bubble butt. And so if you don't learn to look for bony landmarks, sometimes you could be suggesting that someone tuck their tail when they don't really need to be. So if you happen to be a yoga teacher or some type of movement teacher, please be careful with that. It took me a long time to be able to stand up for myself to say, no, I'm actually in my pelvic neutral, and it's not appropriate for me to tuck my tail here. I share that story with you, one, so that you learn as much as you can about the pelvis for yourself, so that you can be an advocate for you. Some people have a less pronounced curve, and that's their shape, and that's okay too, right? So we need to honor, even though bones look relatively the same, there are some differences, and we need to respect that. Some people's spiny processes are bigger, which means they don't have as much extension. Some can be smaller, and they'll have more. And depending on where you are in the back, like behind the heart, right, those spiny processes are larger, and so you don't bend as much there, but that's there for a reason, to protect the heart. But I'm not here to talk about the spine today, I'm here to talk about the pelvis, so I got off track there a little bit. I want you to think of the pelvis like a bowl. So I have my anatomical figure of a pelvis here, and I'll hold it on a side view. So if we think about this pelvis as a bowl, if you inhale and tip the water forward, that's going to be called an anterior tilt, right? And if you exhale and tip the water backwards, that's a posterior tilt, right? So neutral, inhale, tipping forward, anterior tilt, back to neutral. Exhale, tipping the water backwards, posterior tilt, and back to neutral. So range of motion differs from person to person. The two extremes in your body of that range of motion isn't the preferable place that you want to hang out at. You want to find the balance between stability and mobility in your pelvis. Two ways that I see this being taught, and that I teach as well, is the pelvic clock. And if you haven't stumbled on my fundamental movement series, you might want to go over there and watch the pelvic clock video. Pelvic clock means that you're using progressive abdominal contraction to tip the pelvis backward into that posterior tilt, causing the pelvis or a tailbone to tuck under, right? And so your tailbone's here, right? And so it would be, if it's going into a pelvic tilt from that progressive abdominal contraction, it's tucking the pelvis under. This is used to bring awareness of the pelvis positioning, to develop and maintain mobility in the lumbar spine. And you can do it in different gravitational loads, such as supine kneeling, standing. Cat-cow is probably the easiest exercise that I can think of off the top of my head when you're doing this. The other way that you might see this taught is called the corset. And that means that you're hugging in the waist, you're hugging it in towards the center as if you're tightening an invisible corset around your torso. I also like to use the visual of an hourglass, you know, where it tapers in. So you'll get that tapering in sensation in your torso. For guys, a ratchet tie-down strap, you know, as you're ratcheting it in, you might feel that where the hourglass would be. It's an action of progressive abdominal contraction, but here there's no visible change in the position of your pelvis. Your low back remains in neutral. So if I was laying supine, my pelvis would be this way with my spine coming off, the waist, right, in through here. So if we've got that progressive abdominal contraction happening, these bones are staying still. They're not rocking into that pelvic clock that we were just talking about. They're nice and stable. And the soft tissue or the muscles are what's kind of creating that contraction. This helps you maintain stability in the core, this corset action. It also helps to position your pelvis in correct alignments in a lot of poses. So just to kind of recap what we've talked about 3 things here today. One is that we want to create awareness of abdominal contraction with a tilt. We want to create abdominal awareness contraction without a tilt. And we want to use the abdominal contraction with every exhale. So if you take a nice exhale, nice long exhale, you'll feel some abdominal movement and pelvic floor movement happening naturally. And so we're never forcing anything. It's a natural reaction, but we are creating some awareness there and allowing that contraction to really happen. And when you learn to feel the subtle differences within your body between these 3 things, because each one of those 3 steps that I just named, there's a different sensation in the body, then you'll be able to use those as tools to help support your practice more. It always helps to work with a professional yoga therapist that can really help you hone those skills and clear up any questions that might arise. Thank you so much for supporting my life's passion. It was great to talk to you about to tuck or your tail or not. And I look forward to connecting with you again. Namaste.